It's firing it up. Starting
Jared
stream.
Jared is responding. He at 8 a.m., so he will be joining now, I think.
Did he have the wrong time?
He had the wrong time. Yeah, it's always difficult with
Amateurs,
different
man.
time zones.
Yeah, I know. Well, exactly. So, did he have the wrong time?
He had the wrong
Oh, shit, I
time.
need to actually mute the stream audio. There we go. Looks like we're live. Can we get a quick, like, mic check? Can we get somebody in the chat here to just let us know that the audio is good? Alex says, all right, DigiByte.
Yes.
All right, how are we looking there? Do you wanna say good morning, gentlemen? And we'll.
Good morning.
Hey guys, another day. What do I say? Digi.
Okay, Jared will join soon.
I've missed that. Why don't we? Let's start with that, right? So you used to do some videos. You haven't done any videos in a little while. I fucking missed them because they were great.
Videos are nice. Yeah, the time is also nice, and
yeah.
And so I like the videos. You know, the biggest thing about doing videos is content. So you hear, how about this? I guarantee there's videos related to DigiAssets or what I've been doing.
Sounds good. All right, and then we've also got, so Rudy's done a bunch of videos in the past as well. You've done a few interviews. I think this is actually, so is this your first like DigiByte related like live stream talk interview thing, Noah?
Yes. It's mine as well. My first live stream, yeah.
So you've not actually done any live either, Rudy?
No.
Oh, we're breaking ground.
Oh, live. Real. In living color. Hello, everybody.
Okay, how's my hair? Is it okay?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Right. Thank you.
All right, so we got a few people. Hello from Morocco. Hello from Romania. From the Netherlands. This is awesome. All right.
That is awesome.
Unfortunately, due to scheduling conflicts, we've decided we don't want to invite Jared. And no, I'm kidding. He's on his way. It's fine.
Yeah, it's always a challenge when we are in different time zones to get everyone together at the same time.
Exactly.
It's always,
well, so the four of us were having a good chat. This was last night. Like I personally was lying in bed, and I think Jared suggested something earlier in the week. He's like, "Why don't we do a bit of a chat?" And Rudy was like, "Yeah, that sounds great." And Noah's like, "Hell yeah, count me in." And so we were like, "Oh, okay." Problem is we've got America, we've got the Netherlands, we've got New Zealand, and there's not many times that line up terribly well.
Yeah.
So of all the stuff that I've involved with, this is by far the most geographically diversified thing. It's absolutely fascinating. It's literally the whole planet. Look at the people on the call.
Grads from Germany, Turkmenistan.
Yeah.
Where is that?
You never been there?
Nope.
Me neither. No.
So awesome. We've definitely got like some questions and things. Maybe I'll start. I'll pop them up shortly. What I will also do, let's just sort this out a little bit here. Oh no! Like that. Okay. All right, fun times. Well, what is it saying down the bottom there? Yeah, we're looking all right. Okay. So yeah, we basically wanted to put together a bit of like an AMA. We've got a whole lot of things obviously happening at the moment. Do we want to start off, and we'll give a bit of a shout out to DigiByte, because this is the anniversary, year number 1 year down, and hopefully many more to go. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that, Rudy?
Yeah, it's hard to imagine that today it's already 1 year ago since we have started. So time is slipping away, but yeah, we can look back with great satisfaction, and we can look back at a very successful year, I think. But important, this all was never possible without the core team of developers like you guys. Because what you all have been doing in the last year, or even last months, is truly amazing. Protocol developments like AutoCrypt, Dandelion, DigiAssets. I think there's no other project that can show such a great performance of protocol development in such a short time. And it's also important to mention that the DigiByte awareness team would not be here today without the great support and the trust of the DigiByte core team and, of course, the amazing DigiByte community. But let's also not forget our partners like Anthem, VID, ThirdBase, Block 30 Labs. They trust and believe in our technology and in the project development. And also, of course, in the people behind the project. And some of them are even putting their future partially in the hands of DigiByte. So it's not only about 1 year of the DigiByte awareness team, but it's about us all together that are not only building the future of DigiByte, but we are building a future with DigiByte. But yeah, I also have to say I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable position here with you guys because you three are all great, intelligent minds, developers with great technical knowledge. I'm just a layman here, so I'm hopeless when it comes to anything technical. But the good thing is, while I'm in this chat with you guys, I can prevent you people start talking about stuff that apparently is clear and childishly simply for you guys, but incomprehensible for me. So I'm sure with me and many others, I don't know maybe what you're talking about.
I'm not a developer either, though, dude. Don't worry.
I got a lot of limitations, man.
But please allow me to interrupt you guys if I want something to have a better explanation.
Yeah. Well, okay. I mean, so maybe this is a really good little segue here for Noah because you've had one hell of a week. I know you've been absolutely busting your ass off with this. Do you wanna tell people a little bit about some of the fun that you've? I mean, I say fun in a very loose kind of context.
Well, it's been fun. But I think very important for folks to understand there's a little bit of the context. It's my time, my work is clearly not just DigiByte. I'm a normal human being. I literally wake up at 8:45 in the morning. I have work at about 9 o'clock, and as you can see, this is my workstation. I happen to work at home, so I'm sitting here doing one job, doing whatever job, also opening up another screen to work on some DigiByte when some time permits, and quite often, much time permits. So this week has been, well, I believe it was last week as well. We've done a lot. I pulled up Android Digi for the first time in a bit and nixed a couple bugs, made some things better. Went one way, ended up turning it all the way back to we were doing the 24 versus 12, and
that was right.
I had to revert all that stuff. That's okay because that's an interesting conversation. I'm sure you all have.
Yeah, we can go into that a little bit later, even and it kind of. I suppose we'll do that. We'll explain later on why we're doing that, what it means, what the implications of it are, rah. But.
So I promise I'm real. So I touch me, I bleed, or cut me, I bleed. So this was an interesting week. I am not a C developer. I have learned more about C programming this week, I think, in my entire life. Did I make any progress? Actually, yeah, I did. I successfully wrote those couple of snippets to avoid UTXO aggregation for regular transactions.
Which is obviously ideal with what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, I did some SVP work. The balance aggregation skips the asset UTXO. I think there's a couple of other cases that I have to look at. I mean, the user interface for DigiAssets, I think I did in like 40 minutes. So
damn.
I'm an Android guy, guys.
Yeah.
That stuff was easy peasy.
I still remember, so I'm sure you probably also remember this, back when we first started the UI redesign kind of thing. And I was personally anticipating that it was going to take like months and months and months. And I think you came back after the first week, you're like, right, so I'm about 90% of the way done, guys. And I was like, are you freaking kidding? Like, is this guy for real? Wow, holy damn.
It's
amazing, yeah.
Doing it for, was it 10? It's not 30%, but it's 26, 28% of my entire life. So anyway, it's been a long road. But now it's interesting though, because that speed that was achieved is a combination of all this experience and written in Java and Kotlin. Yeah. So I've been playing with Flutter, not to digress too much, but Flutter it's going to change everything in the next decade. It's cross-platform: Android, iOS, web, desktop, refrigerators. It's everything, and it's so much simpler. So that there would be so many thoughts have gone through my head. What if everything was written in Flutter and Dart, and we had one code base for Android and iOS, and literally which would run in a web browser. So we'd have a web wallet. We'd also have that'd be running on desktops too, OS X and Windows. Just that's what's coming for. I would say.
How did you call it? Flutter? How did you call it? Flutter?
Flutter.
Okay.
Relatively new, but it's big in the dev world. I mean, it's literally explosive at this point, but it's making its expanse into non-developer awareness.
Cool. Yeah.
Is that kind of like a goal? I suppose. Well, so you're obviously very, very familiar with Android and developing for it, and we've seen some of the great work that's come from that. Are you starting with Flutter? Is that going to be like your future? I guess. Like, what's?
It's an interesting thought. Like, now you bring up like thoughts on career and what I do with my time and how. I mean, what are you talking like 5-10 year plan? I don't want to be doing any employment. I want to be doing programming for meaningful things. So Flutter would be a great way to spend time meaningfully, and I think that is. I mean, I would love that. So the node crawler. My first implementation of the node crawler was written in Kotlin, and then so I have a bunch of friends that work literally very close to Flutter development. Right in there. Anyway, but the second iteration of the node crawler with the map was written in Flutter, and it's out on iOS, and I'm waiting for a bug to be fixed by the core Flutter team, and I could get it out on Android. But that was my first. It took about 2 weeks, so it was probably about learning experience and all. It took about 100% longer than the node crawler, which took like 3-4 days on Android.
Yep. The only programming language I'm familiar with is Visual Basic. And I can write some macros in Excel, but I don't think it will help you guys, right? Hey, Jared just joined. Hi, Jared.
Yes.
Nice shirt there as well. That sure looks very familiar.
Hey, good morning.
What's up?
Morning.
Hey, yeah. Sorry I'm late. I had my time off an hour here, it looks like.
We were saying the same thing before, trying to get 4 people all like together all at once. The times are just ridiculous.
Right, yeah. No, I had 8 a.m., so I guess we should have used the UTC time.
Aha. How about Millie since last epoch? Yes.
Yeah. We'll start planning them now based on the Autocrypt epoch instead, and we'll just...
Yeah, that makes more sense. To do that.
It's actually been, that's probably one of the most like enjoyable things, like is watching that specifically like roll over, because on the testnet it's daily. And so with all the testing that we've been doing and things, every day watching it go, cool, there's a new one. And if for whatever reason, like at the start especially, it happened, some of the FPGAs weren't being programmed properly and things, and I was like, oh, okay, this one stopped working. And it works. Like you can see, if you don't reprogram it, they can't keep going. It was so cool watching that tick over based on the new epoch and thing for Autocrypt. So yeah, welcome. Anyway, so did you wanna say anything, like introduce anything or whatever? You're just joining us now, and no.
Have we put out a tweet to get more people here?
I think so.
Even a Blockfolio push.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, well I'll put out a couple tweets real quick. And see if we can get some more.
So we had some interesting questions as well. One of which Noah already answered was when moon, and I believe you said there was what was it, a waning gibbon?
A waxing gibbon.
A
waxing gibbon.
Today is 100%. Yesterday was 90%.
I think there is one question that will maybe cover all the questions you might receive, and that is, how can I explain my 21-year-old son, or even better, my 18-year-old mom, what DigiAssets is, assuming that she knows a little about blockchain and crypto in general? Is that easy to explain?
Yes. You look like you want to have a crack at that, Noah. Go for it.
Well, the first thought that comes to mind is what is the contextual knowledge of the sector, the technology sector, blockchain, crypto in general. If just literally, it's fundamentally cryptocurrencies, the notion of sending and receiving, but has a conceptual layer. It's not just a crypto. I hate saying cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
Crypto entity, a crypto asset. But that then now
Currency
we're talking
is
assets.
just one feature. Currency is just one feature of the crypto, but
I go all the way with Jared on that one. It's just it's so when you guys want me to get
go on, do it. Just have some fun.
You want me to digress? So back in college, I actually thought I could do something meaningful, and I quickly encountered the status quo, entrenched was a vested interest, and it was energy. I went to school for electrical engineering, and I thought I was working on fuel enhancement, like basically a way to improve the combustion efficiency of internal combustion engines by substantially modifying air-fuel ratios and adding like hydrogen, oxygen to the mix. Anyway, so I naively thought that it would actually go somewhere, and yeah, that did not happen. So vested interest, and that's where it ties into that thought. So cryptocurrency is the ultimate vested interest. That's not even like the energy industry. You're talking about actual governments. That's going to have no traction whatsoever in any meaningful way. But maybe, I don't know. What do I know? But conceptually, you're literally going up the vested interest in that type of topic. It's government entities.
Well, I mean, that's actually one of the interesting things, though, I guess. So this was something that I was having a chat, I think it was probably a couple weeks ago. And somebody asked me, they were like, well, could we do like a universal basic income as a DigiAsset? And I was like, sure, like absolutely you could. There's absolutely nothing preventing that. I was actually talking with a political party here in New Zealand, and they were asking about what you can do with specifically with DigiAssets, but also with they were looking at a universal basic income and things as well. So what was the question again, Rudy?
Like explaining Digi.
Yeah.
Just explaining to my 21-year-old son or my 80-year-old mom. All
right, so your 80-year-old mom. Let's have a quick crack at this thing without using the word like cryptocurrency or blockchain. DigiAssets are a digital representation of something physical in the real world, and it can be a broad variety of things. It could be trading cards. It could be works of art. It could be I wanted to say currency, but I said I wouldn't say that. And it can be a number of different things. It could be your house. It could be your car. It could be a whole lot of different things. And this is a way of making sure that they are not able to be forged or duplicated or a whole bunch of other security-related things.
I think the simple explanation for somebody that's brand new is the comparison of what the internet has been since 1994 versus what it can be with things like DigiAssets on a blockchain, right? So in 1994 we had the creation of the Internet of Information. So for the last 20 plus years we've gotten really good at exchanging any kind of information. But if I send one of you guys an email, that's just a copy of that email. That copy is not unique. It can be duplicated. It can be copied 1,000 times. But with something like DigiAssets, we can start the conversion process towards an internet of value where we have scarce, rare, independent assets that represent real world value in reality, right? So I think that transition from an internet of information to an internet of value is something that's going to be ushered in by things like DigiAssets.
So there are two things important. So you have this unique assets, and you have the permanent registration into the blockchain of the transaction, right?
Yeah, that's huge. And a DigiAsset can be anything from like a healthcare record. So I think the other important key to take away here is with blockchain technology and the advancement of assets on a blockchain, we are giving and we allow users to begin attempting to take their own data back. So, currently the old adage is if it's free, you're the product. So if you think of, for instance, like Facebook or Google, you have these massive companies that offer free services, but what they're doing is they're taking your data, your information, your attention, and they're selling that off.
Yeah.
And if we take that back to where, like for instance, what Brave's done with the BAT token, which is something, by the way, we actually attempted to do in 2015. A lot of people don't know. We actually forked Brave, and we're going to put DigiByte in place of where the BAT token and how it's used today. But obviously, we didn't have the time or resources at the time to really go through with that. But it's a great idea, and I think that's where all this is heading. And so the more businesses, the more platforms, the more applications that we can get built on top of DigiByte as a DigiAsset, the further we're going to get to allowing people to take back control of their own data on the internet. And I kind of visualize and foresee a future where, you log online and everything from, whether it's your legal documents for you personal, like a will, contracts, title to property, all these different things are going to be anchored and stored in some type of a blockchain, preferably a DigiAsset. You're able to
Good
really
little
take
plug.
charge of your own data.
Yeah.
Okay,
Is that
but do you need a smart contract to manage these assets, or?
So the term smart contract, even if you talk to some of the original group that coined it with Ethereum, is a little bit misleading. But the name stuck, and here we are, right? So
It sounds catchy. Like it really
yeah, it just does. It sounds catchy, right? It sounds good. Do you need a smart contract? Not necessarily, no. Do you need to know how to program a smart contract? Not necessarily, no. You can. And just creating a DigiAsset itself, like for instance, what we did with the DigiFlame, Rudy. I mean, in a way, that's a smart contract because it's a unique individual asset that's anchored into a blockchain, right? But one of the approaches we're trying to take with DigiAssets is we're not trying to expose a massive attack surface. So one of the biggest issues, for instance, with like Ethereum smart contracts, besides the fact that you need gas in every step of the contract, is the fact that there's such a massive attack surface. And that, it's really estimated there's maybe only a few hundred people in the world that are even capable of programming these Solidity Ethereum smart contracts, right? And that's just never going to scale. So,
Okay, but an object like a flame, it's simple. But when you're talking about a will or a deed, there's so much data in it. How do you store this in a digital asset?
Okay, yeah. So with DigiAssets, what we allow people to do is basically they can store as much additional data referring to that asset as they want, right? So there's actually a metadata field in the protocol that's already written in there that can completely be specified at the user's discretion. And more, so the DigiVault wallet is basically just kind of like version 1.0. That's how we get the basic part up and running, right? So there's additional things that you can include in that in the creation of that asset. So we have room for up to an additional 128 opcodes, which
is that
a lot
the so-called OP return? Is that what you call the OP return?
Yeah. So OP return, actually, is there a way to screen share on here?
Yeah. Just down the bottom there, if you wiggle your mouse above the video, you've got screen share.
Ooh, green
Alt
share
essence
button.
is.
Yeah, let me. Yeah, once again, you'll have to forgive me. I just woke up. I'd taken a melatonin last night, so I'm still a little groggy this morning.
It's alright. It's midnight here, so
Yeah.
fuck it.
I think I'm the most lucky guy. It's 2
Yeah.
p.m. here, 2:30.
Yeah. Okay.
I think as
share.
well, like just to kind of go back to what you were talking about there. This is one of the things that I specifically mentioned in my last Medium post towards the end, is that if you're comparing DigiByte and DigiAssets. There we go. With the likes of Ethereum. Ethereum, you can literally program the kitchen sink and everything else into it. But along with that comes a whole bunch of issues where it's obviously that's how they had things like the DAO hack and stuff like that. So with DigiByte and DigiAssets, we haven't exposed absolutely everything, and as a result, it's going to be a lot easier for people to get going with it. And yeah, it's basically the whole idea being Turing complete for
The
Ethereum.
DigiByte doesn't have the congestion issues like Ethereum had, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so, the basic way to start off and give a simple introduction, I really like going back to the Oreo cake or the layered, explanation. Right now, DigiByte has basically kind of 3 layers. You've got that core bottom communications layer, which is where nodes are actually relaying transactions to each other. Then you have the middle layer, which is the DigiByte layer, which is where we have DigiByte itself as a cryptocurrency and digital asset. Without that layer, we really wouldn't be incentivizing people to run nodes on the internet. But then that top layer, that's where DigiAssets comes in, right? Well, so OP return is how we're actually anchoring these DigiAssets transactions into the DigiByte blockchain. So OP return allows us to store an additional 80 bytes of arbitrary data in a transaction. Now, the thing is that 80 bytes of data is completely garbled. It's completely mumbled and jumbled, and it's not human readable, right? But it allows us to very compactly append a DigiAsset transaction. So what we really have to do is look at how that asset scheme is broken down and what exactly we're putting in this OP return transaction. So without getting overly technical here, what we actually do is we take those 80 bytes and we split them up into a protocol that can be read by a computer and then turned into human read information. So the first 2 bytes are the protocol identifier, which in our case is DA. So we like our DigiAssets code basically goes through and it parses all DigiByte transactions and looks for transactions that have an OP return input and basically makes sure that they see something that has DA in the first 2 bytes of those 80 bytes. Then it looks at basically which version of the protocol. Then it goes through, and this is where the smart contract features come in. It goes through and it basically looks what opcodes are included in the transaction. And then it goes through and it looks for additional metadata. So if you see here, we actually represent the metadata as a SHA-256 hash, just like blocks are hashed, of each other. So we have the ability to basically put an unlimited amount of data into one of these DigiAssets. So you could, the sky is literally the limit. More importantly, we're not storing everything on chain, just the cryptographic representations of what we need. So we can actually scale it infinitely more than what's possible with Ethereum right now, because the problem with Ethereum is every single thing has to be put on chain, and every step in the smart contract also needs to be requires fuel or ether. So it gets very expensive very quickly. So it's very cost prohibitive. Now, the interesting thing is a lot of people don't realize that Ethereum started with a very similar format to kind of where we're starting from right now. So actually, we're looking at taking a lot of the opcodes. So if you see, these are the opcodes that we have right now. We have places for up to 128 different values. So we actually only have about 20 different opcodes in here right now, right? Now, basically opcodes are like a set of rules for creating what we're calling a smart contract. So for instance, if I go over here and I look at what Ethereum's opcodes are right now, they've actually went through, and what makes Ethereum a Turing complete language is the inclusion of these. I think they have almost like 60 different opcodes in here. So that's actually, we can actually take a lot of this same structure and format and port this over eventually. That's kind of the plan to experiment with. So that way in our opcode structure, we can actually allow for people to use Solidity and potentially build the exact same smart contract with DigiByte, just in a much more rigid, secure framework. Because we're not doing this all within the chain itself. So we're actually mitigating and reducing the amount of attack surfaces. So that's kind of the technical overview. Let me go back to the opcodes here. Anybody who wants to look at this, if you just go to digibyte.core, you look at DigiAssets protocol specification, we go in here and we actually explain how these opcodes work into the DigiAsset scheme. We go in and explain basically transfer instructions. So when you create a new asset, you actually have the ability to choose several parameters. So yeah, and going back to your question about the metadata, Rudy, the cool part is you could actually put some very advanced smart contract code in that metadata. So for instance, you could basically have some code that goes out and looks at some sort of IoT sensor or some sort of physical real world input that then triggers a message on chain. And if that particular program controls the private keys for those DigiAssets, they could do a whole number of different things. So it's actually, it really does allow for almost an unlimited amount of potential. In like I kept going back to, it's a more rigid, secure environment in the blockchain itself. Because at the end of the day, the fundamental structure of DigiByte, the DigiByte protocol, is not changing. So it's basically, it continues working the same way it has for 5 years. The difference is we're taking advantage of OP return in a way that we've never done before. So I don't know if I confused everybody or helped out a little bit there. But
so there's one
Let me
thing
call
that
my mom if she understands it.
I always like to remember when, prior to DigiAssets, we talked about various conversations and various things I've heard. You've mentioned, Jared, these are digital assets. DigiByte. We never like to talk about it as a currency. So, a thought always in my mind is a company, theoretically, if they wanted, can use the fundamental minimally divisible part of a DigiByte. And if they agree upon a shared thought of what that minimally divisible part is, they could use it as a digital asset. So this just allows you to add metadata on and more information. So another interesting one is the divisibility. I did notice that you can't send less than one. So that's a conceptual distinction between fundamental DigiByte and digital assets. Or can you send fractions of an asset?
Yeah, so you can send fractions. It's going to depend on when it's issued. It's sort of similar to like Ethereum. When you set it up, you can choose basically the number of assets, and you also have to then pick basically where your decimal point is along the way. And so if I issue, let's say I issue 1,000 assets with a divisibility of 2, then I'm issuing 10 assets, and I can go into 2 decimal points, sort of thing, something like that. So it's yeah. I think I was talking with Nigel about this earlier. It's really stupid when you first hear it, but it's the way that they do it with Ethereum, and we'll make a little blurb basically so that people understand it a lot better, and yeah.
Yeah, it's really up to the user to define, whether you want, typically it gets very confusing for people when you go past 2 decimal points. So I think we should have it kind of default to there.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could issue, like for instance with the DigiTorch, when we issued that in the DigiFlame, we could have issued 0.000001, but that just conceptually kind of would confuse people because it's not an entire unit. So that's why we went with 1. So like in the case of like if we create a title to a property or a will, like a personal will, Obviously, we'd recommend people just do a unit of 1 with no divisibility. So basically, you could either send 0 or, well, you couldn't send 0, but you could send 1, but nothing less. So depending on the type of asset, and, one of the conversations we've had internally is, it is a little bit, trying to explain to people what it is. So we're trying to come up with categories of types of assets that we can kind of have predetermined in an example setup, so people can kind of get, just use a prefabricated template to create, whether it's a legal document, whether it's like shares, concert tickets, etc.
So that was one of the things that I actually mentioned as well in my last Medium article. Actually, I'll look that up and I'll put a link in the chat. Where basically I've said that one of the things that we're going to be focusing on as well is writing up this documentation and writing up these examples and things like that as well. You're still screen sharing, by the way, just in case.
Yes. I actually...
But yeah, so that's one of the things that we want to have these examples where you can go, right, what I want to do is I want to issue my will on the blockchain. I can go and we've got this and it's here and it's easy to basically see this example and get started yourself.
Yeah, the key takeaway here is really, anything of value, being able to transfer that. Well, first of all, being able to represent that in a unique, scarce digital manner. And then secondly, being able to transfer it anywhere you need to. So that's, and then once again, and then also, we want people to get on here and start experimenting with testnet and to start experimenting with actually issuing these things. And we're working on making that as simple as possible. And we've got, I just got a message. So we're working on importing DigiAssets to 2 wallets right now. The mobile SPV wallet, which Noah has been working extremely hard on. And then DigiByte Go.
My brain hurts.
Yeah. It's been one hell of a couple weeks, right? Like.
Yeah.
Yes. I have 2 inches today, by the way. I think I'm really close today. I think I'm literally at the point of just broadcasting the transaction. So
nice.
Yeah, I'm actually seeing if I can pull up DigiByte Go here, and the key is, for those that are kind of wondering. So, like at the Global Summit, we used the DigiVault wallet. The issue that we're running into that, and the reason we haven't actually released it publicly yet, which, I mean, it's open source, so anybody can get on there and compile it themselves and start working on it. The biggest problem is it's super slow for the syncing process.
Yeah.
So we're working on some fixes and some updates to allow it to parse DigiAssets transactions quicker and to get up to speed, much faster.
Just for those who are curious, by comparison, when you fire up your Android or iOS wallet, like you've got your cell phone, you open it up, you hit the button, it's there straight away. With DigiVault, even on a relatively fast computer, syncing is probably still like close to 24 hours, give or take. So it's, and that's even after all of there's been some decent work already gone into it. So it's not as like click and go.
Josiah,
yeah.
Just to be clear, so DigiVault is the name of the wallet, right?
One of the asset-based wallets, yes. So I think what Jared's about to show us is DigiByte Go plus DigiAssets.
Yeah, so this is DigiByte Go. So what we've got is a lot of people that may not be familiar. DigiByte Go was the former DigiByte gaming wallet from 2015. So it's a wallet that's kind of morphed, but it's been in the DigiByte ecosystem for quite a while. But it's actually pretty much the only multi-sig wallet that we kind of maintain. I mean, technically you can do multi-sig transactions with the core wallet, but it's a little bit more difficult. So
it's a pain in the ass to do. Like, it's a real pain. Yeah. We've also got BitBill for those who are curious, like own wallet, own Bit, and BitBill, that wallet. They also do a really good multi-sig implementation, but DigiByte Go is probably one of the like easiest click and away you go as well.
And will DigiVault also be multi-sig?
No, it's not currently multi-sig, and it would actually be a fair amount of work to put that in there. Now, the important thing, the reason we're talking about multi-sig is, let's say the four of us that are on this call right now want to create an asset, and that asset, we want to make sure that not a single one of us can send. So, let's say that we have 100,000. What's a good example?
We'll call them Joe tokens.
Yeah, 100,000 Joe tokens. That represent let's say equity or shares in Joe's dream mansion on the beach somewhere. And so we have 100,000 of those tokens, and when we issue them, we want to make sure that we're all in agreement before we send those Joe tokens elsewhere, or we decide to sell 10% of the underlying value of that particular property, right? Of Joe's beach house, Joe's beach mansion, right? So we have 100,000 Joe's beach mansion tokens. And if we just sent that
I like where this is going.
Address, if we just sent that to a single address, and let's say Rudy decided, without talking to the rest of us, that he was going to take 20% of it and sell it on the side. Well, he could do that if he controlled the private keys. Because remember, if it's not your keys, you don't have control. You're just relying on somebody else's good faith. But with multi-sig, each one of us has a private key. And let's say we made it to where 3 out of the 4 of us had to agree to authorize on a transaction. So, let's say I kind of vote against it, but, Noah, Rudy, and Josiah all agree. Well, then they can all basically sign the transaction cryptographically, and then basically send it. So what multi-sig really allows for us to do is mathematically make sure every single person, whatever the specifications are. So we could say that 2 out of the 4 of us had to agree to it. Or we could even make it to where all 4 of us had to agree on it if it was something super important. But that kind of functionality is very important in a smart contract scenario. So our Go wallet actually allows us to do that. So let's see here. So this is actually an asset that's in the wallet. I don't know if I have the right branch here. I might have.
We've been doing a lot of testing during the week for those who are curious.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
This is live as it happens, and I don't think we've ever kind of shown this part of it, at least publicly, these new changes. So
yeah. Oops. I don't have my Redis. The other issue with DigiVault right now is you got to have your DigiByte core wallet running. And you have to have like Redis server running, so there's a lot of backend components that are required, which is a little bit, it's definitely cumbersome for, a beginner or somebody that doesn't have a technical background. So that's why we're trying to streamline this, because we realize if it's not super easy and super simple for people to use, we're not going to get a lot of adoption with it.
yeah, I think that was actually, we were talking with Nigel, and Nigel was saying, I can't get it to work. It's a pain in the ass to set up. I was even talking with Matt, who is crypto currently on YouTube, and he was basically saying, yeah, it's going to take a lot of work for me to go through, get it set up. What's going to happen with like a click and run sort of solution? And so that's obviously what we'll kind of come to, that kind of realization, is that it needs to be click and run. This is obviously going to be one of the things where both iOS and Android will naturally shine a lot. So this is what Noah has been working on during the week, especially. Do you want to kind of, while Jared's working away there, do you want to give us a bit of a rundown of some of the fun that's been happening, or
Android level, Android style? Well, from a user interface perspective, I can spin up stuff relatively quickly, and that is what was done. I have a capacity to display assets at this point sent to a particular address, I mean, the period. They display, and now I have a button that says send asset, and it's always a fascinating topic, because my wife, when I first met my wife, she wasn't into what I do. She didn't know that behind the scenes of a button press, things happen. It's not just pressing a button. So it's just fascinating what goes into an application, and when you press that button to send, there's a song and a dance that goes on, an interaction with one API, some processing locally on the device, and then the transmission of a transaction ultimately through another API, whether it's directly to a node or through like a RESTful API, HTTP endpoint is another story. But so that's where we're at actually for Android, is the transmission of a signed DigiAsset transaction to the blockchain. And that in my mind, at least everyone I think is on the same page for an MVP product, is the capacity to receive and retransmit, send a desirable quantity of assets. We do still have work to do, because once the functionality is there, receiving and sending, the subtleties of an app come into play. So we'll have to have as many eyes on as possible, and see where we could change little things such that the user interface actually makes sense, is optimized, tweaked, edge cases, and that's the nature of mobile development. Frankly, generally any application development.
I think as well, like, so what a lot of people don't see is like you say, all of this work that goes in behind the button press, where it has to find all of the appropriate inputs for the transaction. It's got to also grab the asset that it wants to send, potentially divide it, send part of the asset back to yourself, part of the asset onto the other person. It's got to sign all of the relevant different parts that are involved. It's then also got to handle the underlying, like that second layer of the cookie where Jared was showing before as well, the actual DigiByte network as well. So there's a lot that goes on behind that button press, and it's certainly been an interesting week, to say the least. I know that you and some of the other guys have been working really hard on that, so that's been super cool to see. And now's a great chance to obviously thank you for all the work that you do specifically on the Android app. So I know how much you pour your heart and soul into it, and you're incredibly talented, so thank you so much for that.
Oh yeah, thank you. I thank you. I mean, generally speaking, when I work on any application, I always like to say it's not a subtle difference. There's a big difference between an app and a great app. And just anything I ever touch, it needs to work well, and it needs to cover all the edge cases, all the bases. It needs to have a very reasonable, intuitive user interface, and that's what I always fight for in my corporate work and my personal work. And if anyone's seen my applications over the years on the Play Store, there's a lot of logic and meaning behind decisions that have been made, and that's what's gone into the Android DigiByte app. A lot of discretion has been taken in many places. That's just best practices, and it's not just intuitive. It's just like what's meant in mobile product, what's meant for the platform. Subtle differences with iOS included. Anyway, I don't know.
Yeah, looks like we're having an issue with the API here. I don't know if it went down again or what's going on.
I thought Gary was saying that he had halted that one for the issuance.
No, just in general. Maybe it's working now.
If you try turning it off and on again.
Yeah, so if you can see my screen, if we go through here and we create test live stream Joe's Beach House. Right, so we're gonna actually we're gonna issue. So the issuer is DigiB test team, and so this is kind of where. So this will be the format from the Go Wallet, and the Go Wallet's going to be a desktop app that you download, and it's not going to actually require a sync time. So the user can basically start using it right away. So the description, we're going to say test coins for live stream demo. And so as we're issuing this this asset, we have the ability to say, is it reissuable or is it not reissuable? So the actual, what that means is we can either lock it at a hard limit of 100,000, or we can make it reissuable where if, you know, in the future you wanted to put an addition on the house and you wanted to sell, you know, like say 20,000 more, you could issue 20,000 more. So this is really handy if you want to have a limited amount of something, or if you actually want to be able, so like typically in the case of like companies with shares, you know, like a tech company will start out with 10 million shares in a Delaware C Corp, but then as they take on additional investment, they'll issue additional shares. Or like, let's say you have like a concert ticket, you know, and you say, hey, I have 500 tickets to this concert. But then you realize when you talk to the people that are organizing the event that they have additional room for 50 more people. So if you had made the issue, or you'd made the tickets not reissuable, then you basically wouldn't be able to add additional seats. But if you make it reissuable, then you can. So in this case, we're going to lock it. We're going to make sure there's never more than 100,000 created. Now, in terms of metadata, you actually have the ability to add your own data. So, you know, that can be whatever it needs to be. And this is where the flexibility of DigiAssets really shines, in the fact that we can basically, so, you know, what's a good example here that we could use? The name of this metadata field could be, you know, let's say proximity to beach. So we could call it proximity. And we could say that it's, you know, 10 meters from the beach.
I'm one of those.
Yeah, this sounds lovely. I'm loving this more.
You know, so there's really, it's as flexible and as creative as you want. So what DigiAssets allows you to do is to add your own fields, right? And then you choose what and how you handle that metadata. And what that metadata is, how it's secured is, so you could have an entire full-length major motion picture of data as metadata, which would be gigabytes of metadata, or you could literally have, you know, just that one sentence, which just is just a few kilobytes of data, right? So it's very flexible in that people can really take it and do what they wish with it. So if I go ahead and I issue this, there it is, 100,000 assets issued. And then if I come on here
Beach
to,
house.
and as you can see here, there's actually a tiny amount of data that's sent in a, so there's a very small amount of DigiByte that is actually sent in the transaction. And so let's see, here we go. That's the test net. So boom, there's our issuance right there, just occurred. So that's live on the DigiByte blockchain. If we come and we look at this asset, test live stream Joe's Beach House. So anybody following along can go to digiexplorer.info. They can look at that asset, and that asset will forever be locked into the DigiByte blockchain. So
what's the amount of underlying DigiByte that will be involved with the issuing and transaction? Is that a fixed amount, or how is that being calculated?
It's a very tiny amount. So it has to, and this is an interesting question, right? In order for it to be recorded on the ledger, there's a tiny amount that needs to be sent, which at this time is about 0.0006, which is, you know, it's a fraction of a penny. But there still needs to be a cost there, and that needs to be relative, which we're talking about that because we want to make sure we can keep people from just spamming the network with unnecessary problems. Mm-hmm. You know, for those that may not have seen it or heard of it, you know, Raven Coin actually allows you to do asset issuance directly in the core wallet. The problem is there's been a lot of spam and advertisements that have been popping up. So we want to make sure that somebody doesn't come in and start using and abusing DigiAssets to, you know, spam all sorts of nefarious stuff.
That brings up one heck of a topic: issuance and where it should be done, why it should be done, how it should be done. So as much, not to hijack or anything, but
Yeah, no, absolutely.
there's
You're right.
like there's who would want to issue assets? Generally speaking, you got two categories. You got general public, or you have like an entity, like a company, like a title house that, you know, a government agency or a local town bureau that manages the titles of properties. Clearly, that is a perfect use case. That's not spam. That's they're issuing titles for properties on the chain. The reason Raven encounters that scenario is the notion of how do you determine who can issue? Is there a centralized trusted authority? And how do you prevent spam? And that's a very, very complicated topic. Do we want to actually just let anyone and everyone to issue assets on a mobile? What is the purpose of issuing an asset? It's a very hairy conversation.
Yeah, it brings up, one of the things we don't want to do is we eventually want DigiAssets to get on multiple exchanges, right? Similar to, because here's how it works. If you have a DigiByte wallet, you have access to any DigiAsset, or at least to visually see any DigiAsset ever issued. So just like some of the exchanges, all it takes for them to add ERC20 tokens is they just have to have their Ethereum wallet up and running. So the beautiful thing is, since DigiByte's already on 100 exchanges already globally, we can actually say, hey, you've already got a DigiByte wallet running, just run this additional code and you can parse these DigiAssets, and then you could, add those. Now, the difference is, we want to get use cases for DigiAssets because it can be more than just shares in a company. But the problem is, if somebody gets on our platform, issues, shares for their company, and they don't do that within the rules of their existing jurisdiction, whether they're in Europe or the United States, then we're talking about unlicensed securities. So there's also some legal implications to this that people need to be very aware of. And that's one of the reasons why we've decided, through our mobile wallet, we don't want to, by default, at this time, allow for the issuance, especially because we don't want people doing, some sort of scam ICO airdrop. We want, legitimate use cases for DigiAssets. So, but eventually we want to have some partner exchanges that are licensed and that have all the proper setup and makes the government regulators happy to allow basically, companies and stocks to be issued as DigiAssets. But the difference is that's going to have to be done through a regulated platform, even though technologically there's really no difference between that and issuing 1,000 tickets for a concert.
So in fact, the Tether isn't kind of digital asset, but it's created on the Bitcoin blockchain, right? Is it comparable with DigiAssets?
Yes, absolutely. So you could actually, in theory, if a certain entity wanted to, they could come on and create a stable coin as a DigiAsset. So they could create any fiat currency representation they wanted, whether it was the euro, or the kroner or the dollar. That's very much possible. That could be issued. And that's actually a good example for why you would want to make an asset reissuable. So if you started out with, a million euro representation as a stable coin, as a DigiAsset, then, you might have got another 500,000 euros. So you issue 500,000 more. And obviously we would hope that the stablecoin issuer at that point would be able to verify the reserves of euros in a bank account somewhere. But that's absolutely a possibility with DigiAssets in the future.
The most interesting thing is, I think about this all the time. DigiByte exists, meaning the network, the node network. It does what it does. What we're doing with assets right now is basically we're writing software that has a capacity to craft a particular transaction that has the additional metadata, has all the fields that we want, that do the concept of assets. Theoretically, a company that has access to billions of dollars can write this software. They can write all of the stuff that we're doing with access to 1,000 engineers They could create entire products and services. They could do all of this in a fraction of the time and deploy it because the node network exists, the blockchain exists. It's a public ledger, and I think about that all the time because it's not in our control really where this whole thing heads. We're just pushing it along as best as we can with the time and resources that we have available, making software like this. But a company, it's that notion in my mind that a critical tipping point could happen on any of these blockchains, really, not just DigiByte for that matter, where just someone just comes in and it's like, all right, a public ledger. To us, it makes sense. Like, why? A fun notion in my mind of a public ledger versus private data storage. They're paying for their infrastructure. They're paying for their electricity. They're paying for their databases. They're paying for their IT. The DigiByte network, no company needs to pay for it. It's live around the world, decentralized. People, individuals are paying the electricity for these servers that contain complete duplicate copies of quote unquote the database. The only reason companies haven't jumped on that notion is they want control. And I can appreciate that. I think everyone understands that. But there's such a power where the company no longer has to pay for the server infrastructure. This is a public utility. That's just a crazy notion to me.
Yeah, and I think what's going to happen, and from the experience I had, is I take, for instance, Microsoft. So for those that were around in 2015, Microsoft, I was meeting with people in Asia and the United States, and that's actually, if people don't remember, the former company that I was affiliated with, DigiByte Holdings, we'd actually got the BizSpark Plus program from where they gave us free hosting. So, a lot of things like, for instance, DigiExplorer was hosted courtesy of Microsoft for almost 2 years. But at the time they were trying to work on some internal stuff, but it didn't really take off and it didn't really work. And then if you look what they finally did with their service, where they're basically running somewhat of a similar thing to DigiID on top of Bitcoin. And I think companies go through this phase of evolution and thought process where at first they're like, oh yeah, Bitcoin, that's really cool. Oh, but we can't have Bitcoin because that's bad. We just need the blockchain. But then they're like, well, we're just, we're going to allow people to set up their own private blockchains, their own private networks. And then they start realizing fundamentally, at an engineering level, it doesn't make any sense because you're talking about a very inefficient system from a computer science perspective. So if you just have a central issuance point, there's many different databases that are much, much faster than in the way an actual blockchain works. But then they realize, okay, in order to get the security and all the benefits of what blockchain technology offers, it has to be done on a public decentralized chain. Because without that, you really aren't seeing the benefits for all the possibilities. And I think that's what's going to happen. So I do think it's a matter of time until people wake up, at the corporate level, and then really start realizing, hey, we need to take what we're doing and we need to anchor it and put it into a public chain. And if we have all the tools in place, like Noah said, it is a public utility, and it's a public utility for everybody in the world. So whether you're in Europe, whether you're in the United States, whether you're in New Zealand, whether you're in Australia, anybody can come onto this and start issuing digital assets that are validated, recognized, and secured anywhere in the world. And that's pretty kind of remarkable. And what we're doing, instead of, using the laws and jurisdictions of one country, we're using the laws of mathematics to back this, right? In cryptography. And, stuff that you can't alter it, you can't break it. And I think that's a very powerful driving force that's going to help, issue or move this forward.
As much as our software will do exactly what we intended to do, I love that everything, like the Vault, the Android DigiByte app, even Core, These are literally, if you think about what it means, like a company pouring in $1 billion into a software development project. Everything, literally, Bitcoin, every crypto project out there, these are the software that they've made on top of these distributed node networks are literally examples, just examples to these people of what can be done. Can you imagine a core wallet where a company poured in like a $500 million?
Yeah, that's just it's amazing to think about. I mean, I think about what we've achieved. You know, and by the way, it's important that everybody knows that none of us are getting paid to work on this. You know, a lot of people think that you know, we have all these employees that are being paid. No, DigiByte's decentralized. There was never an ICO. There's no company. You know, this is volunteer driven. I mean, yes, we are, you know, taking, and the beauty of open source is, you know, we can build on each other's work. We can build on others' work, and then others can build on our work. And by sharing that collaborative environment, I think it's actually accelerated the development of open source blockchain technology much quicker than would have happened at a private company where everything's compartmentalized, and it's need to know, and then it's not open source, so people aren't free to critique it or test it and try and break it. You know, because one of the reasons, like, we can say DigiByte has been battle hardened over the years, we've had issues. You know, back in 2014, you know, the reason we ended up creating DigiShield wasn't because we just randomly thought it up one day. It was because people were attacking our chain and stalling it. And, you know, we were going hours without blocks because, you know, multi-pools were coming on and off. So, you know, since we are such, you know, a much older chain, we've had time to kind of smooth out a lot of these hiccups. And, you know, we've put it out there for the world, and many people have tried to break it multiple times. You know, that's something I don't think is very appreciated. You know, there has been several attempts to 51% attack DigiByte, you know, but after each one of those attempts, you know, so far nobody's actually, you know, been successful, because obviously there's a lot of people that are interested in stopping DigiByte. But each time it makes us stronger, and, you know, we just keep moving forward.
Definitely a benefit to any attack in that regard. Even just the notion that the source code is open, just that constant feedback, that constant potential for the acquisition of new information on how to better the software, better the fundamental protocol, so on and so forth. That is something that just doesn't exist in a closed source corporate environment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So do we have any more questions on the live stream here? For those that are watching, it looks like we have a few people on here.
There was a couple. Let me grab this. So Cryptogeneticist was asking what will be needed to create a DigiAsset, which we've kind of covered. They said, will there be something to download? Will you have to download DigiVault? Just some clarity. Well, so yeah, we're going to have obviously we've got mobile, DigiByte Go, DigiVault. There's going to be a bit of a suite there. And they also wanted to ask a bit about the fee structure. Do you want me to quickly talk about that? We've got...
Yeah.
So if I go to DigiExplorer, I'll bring this up. So you guys won't see this, but I'm just bringing the window up over top of the stream here.
Answer the boys' questions. Yeah.
So if we have a look, if you go to digiexplorer.info, and we'll use the one where he's just issued the Joe's Beach House here. We've got 100,000 of them. And so if we're looking at the transaction, you can see it's broken up into several pieces. So there was 5 DigiByte that went into it. So of that 5 DigiByte that went into it, we've got our fee down the bottom here. So that's 0.0002 of a DigiByte. So that's not a lot. You can issue several hundred times for one DigiByte, basically.
And to clarify, that 5 DGB was simply being moved to a change address, right?
Yeah. So down on the right-hand side here now, if we look at it, it says mined May 19th, 2019, almost 1 a.m. for me. That's cool. It's showing on my local time. And so we can see here, this is how much of the DigiByte went into creating this particular asset. So 0.000006 of a DigiByte. So it's not a lot. From there, we can see underneath it says output contains the following DigiAssets. So the DigiAsset itself was created. And then underneath here, this is the change address. So 4.9997 came back to a change address, which was still inside of Jared's wallet. So if we think about that, that's 0.000 what are we, 3.3 went into it. So like that's not a lot of DigiByte at all, really, in the grand scheme of things. But that's roughly what the fees are, give or take, at the moment, depending on a few bits and pieces, how much data went into it, what you lift for a mining fee, that sort of thing. So,
and it's important to clarify here, we're actively talking, and we want to open this up to the community of what to set that fee to, because what we've decided is once we get like the DigiByte Go wallet out there and people are able to more easily start using DigiAssets, we want to make sure people don't start abusing it. So one of the things that was happening with Raven Coin was somebody would go to their block explorer, parse like the top 10,000 addresses that recently received Raven, and then they would send an ad to that wallet. So they would basically send, 0.000 whatever one Raven with an ad for a website. I mean, I saw everything from, dirty
Viagra
websites on the internet to Viagra pills. We want to make sure DigiByte doesn't get abused like that. And so there is a real kind of problem, an issue with people, because it would be easy. We want to make sure people can't just go on DigiExplorer, and every time they see a recent transaction, or just write a script for that matter, every time there's a recent transaction to an address, they get www.bonerpills.com sent to their wallet, right? So, we want to make sure that doesn't happen.
It's a catch-22 with what folks kind of want as the answer. Folks want, when can we send or create assets in mobile, or when does the general public have a capacity to create an asset? And that's a very, as I said, a hairy topic. We want to be able to allow people to create assets, but we have to control that. But that entails who controls it, why do they control it, how do they control it, how do we prevent spam, but also allow the creation of assets? I don't have an answer.
Yeah, it's a balancing act, and this is where we're talking about, what if we required a $5 or $10 fee, and that fee isn't paid to anybody except for miners on the network. So when a DigiAsset transaction is created, there's an additional $5 worth of DigiBytes that go along with it. And by the way, this is just for issuance. This isn't for transfers. So if you come on and you're like, hey, I'm going to create 1,000 concert tickets for my high school choir, and people are going to go download it and use the app and DigiID to authenticate themselves when they come in, that could be done, right? And in terms of, there's a good question about how about non-fungible assets like ERC2721s? Absolutely, right? And what that really means is that an asset's individually unique, right? That one asset is different than another asset. So a prime example of that is our concert tickets, right? Every seat is different, You have the front row tickets, then you have like the nosebleed section tickets, and then each ticket has like a number and identifier of where it's physically located. That's a good example of a non-fungible asset, in the fact that one ticket is not like the other ticket. So obviously, if you bought a ticket and everyone was treated as the same, and you thought you were spending a bunch more money on front row seats, and then you ended up all the way in the back, that would be an issue. So that's a good question. I just saw that on the chat.
Yeah. One of the other examples as well that we've talked about a lot is specifically like trading cards and things like that. So if for example, if you take Magic the Gathering cards, I know that they obviously go into there's certain limitations around their issuance. Some of them are unique and things like that. And if you could imagine this being a DigiAsset, not only would you be able to then verify and validate that there is a fixed supply, you could know what that supply is, know that they can't ever reissue it, and know that they've perhaps distributed, let's say there's 100 of these particular cards, you could know that they've distributed 50 of them and they're still holding on to the remaining 50, for example, and it's, I mean, Magic the Gathering is obviously kind of interesting because that's why that was what Mt. Gox originally was Magic the Gathering Online Exchange, and they just basically repurposed an existing domain that they had for that. So I always find it's kind of like full circle to bring that back to. But
lotuses on the chain so we can see where they are. Them alpha lotuses.
Yeah. There
Any other
was...
questions?
Where was the other one? I might have accidentally dismissed the other one that I had handy here.
So, community, get us some ideas on how we're going to handle issuance, because we need some ideas.
Yeah. Well, I suppose it's a really good point. Like, it's not just us. It's not just specifically the four of us. We take the feedback very seriously, especially when it comes to things like with the app building and the likes of that. And so, if there are suggestions, that's very much what the whole idea of DigiByte is a consensus of where the network should go, literally by definition. So, yeah, look, send your feedback by all means. The more the merrier. Really.
So, did you all talk about UdoCrypt earlier? Or...
Not really. We haven't really gone too much into that. We mostly seem to start off straight onto the DigiAssets.
Okay, cool. Because everybody, we need to get everybody updated on 7.17.2. So if you haven't updated your core desktop wallet, please do that.
What happens if a big exchange don't update? What will happen in the end if they?
Well, first of all, everyone has until July 19th to do this. But if they do not update at that point, we have a list that we've been actively maintaining. We've been reaching out to all these people in the background. Several members of the community have. But if, like, for instance, I don't want to name names just because I don't want to dog anybody, but if a big exchange does not update, they are technically on a separate blockchain after the fork, and basically people won't be able to send and receive to the rest of the network. So it's something that, we really are stressing, but this is why we allowed such a large amount of time, right? And from the latest...
Apart from exchanges, wallet providers are also informed and...
Right. And I think we've had, I think half of those have updated. We're at about 45% upgraded right now. So at any given time, depending on which nodes we pull metrics from, I'm seeing about 45% of the peers are running on 7.17.2, which isn't bad for 2 weeks because in the past...
More pools have already upgraded as well, specifically. So when it comes to the mining pools, if you have a look at autocrypt.digibyteservers.io, we've got a little bit of a countdown there that's kind of counting down to the block and the day when we change over to start mining autocrypt. The other thing is, as well, is you want to upgrade now, and pools specifically as well should upgrade now because they can still continue to mine Myriad Grostal in the interim. And then when that block ticks over, then autocrypt will basically start being accepted by the network. Somebody also asked what happens if, let's say, a pool doesn't want to upgrade. They will basically find that they won't be able to produce blocks after... They might get 1 or 2 blocks basically down the road, and that's probably going to be about it before they run out of hash power to actually consecutively create blocks on, for example, Myriad Grostal. So even if a pool was basically going, yeah, we like Myriad Grostal, nobody does, but I'm just from what I understand, most people are pretty against it. And are very willing to upgrade to autocrypt. But if a pool that had Myriad Grostal basically said, yeah, I want to keep mining Myriad Grostal, screw you, I'm not updating, they would, even our biggest Myriad Grostal pool that I'm aware of would get about 3 to 4 blocks before they end up relatively stalling. They wouldn't be able to proceed without the rest of the network. So yeah, there we go. Cool, you've got that.
Yeah, so it looks like we're getting actually over 51% acceptance yet, and we need to get up to 70% before it actually locks in. So if for some reason we didn't hit 70%, nothing would actually happen. So we feel like that's like more than a super majority at that point.
Yeah.
Of the,
so we're specifically there's me, and I know that there's also a bunch. I think we've got about 7 or 8 other people in this chat that have been going through and specifically and directly contacting both mining pools, exchanges, wallet providers, services such as DigiByte Cafe that are on top of the DigiByte blockchain that we're aware of, and directly informing them, not just telling them and kind of pushing it and leaving it, but we're actually waiting for like a confirmation back from them as well, and actively following up to say, hey, look, it's been a week, we haven't heard back from you. Have you upgraded? Is there anything that you want to ask us? Is there any holdup in particular? Can we help with anything? Any questions and that sort of thing? So, yeah, if you
there's
go,
nothing more you can do.
yeah. The link as well there is autocrypt.digibyteservers.io, and actually what I'll do is let me go. Where are we? I'll put this in the chat here. Why is my chat not coming up? Here we go.
Actually, it looks like Nigel had dropped it in there already. So.
Ah, yeah. Bettier did as well up there. Yeah.
So
cool.
for those on the screen here, just one. This is what the DigiByte Go desktop app's going to look like. I mean, it's going to be the same thing, but it's just going to be a Windows EXE download, or it's going to be I'm on a Mac right now, but this is how it's kind of going to look. And the advantage over DigiVault is you're not going to have to run all this background process, and it's going to be real time. So as soon as you download it, you can start using it, and it'll be compatible with your previous DigiByte Go wallet as well. So anyway, that's just I just compiled it here. So we're pretty close to that. We're ironing out some of the kinks. We want to test it. We want to make sure it works, because one of the big things we want to make sure doesn't happen with DigiAssets is we want to make sure that the DigiBytes that you've received, so for instance, like if you see down here, the first test asset that I sent myself was actually 0.000006 DGB. We got to make sure that the wallet doesn't spend that in a regular other transaction. So if you just wanted to randomly send, say you had 100 DigiBytes in here, you want to make sure you don't send that input that contains those assets. So it's something we're taking serious. We're making sure that doesn't happen, because that would cause a lot of problems. That's more of a technical issue, but we're working through that. So
I suppose now is also probably a really good time to briefly touch on that. So a lot of people know that the DigiByte Android and DigiByte iOS wallets are not directly compatible with other things, for example, such as Coinomi wallet. Now, with DigiAssets, we've kind of got a unique opportunity here to, I suppose, educate wallet vendors and make sure that they don't do exactly as Jared has just mentioned, which inadvertently happened during some initial testing. I think Noah's having a little giggle there. Yeah.
I was gonna say Noah's sent many assets to the burial ground on testnet.
Like, why is where'd it go? It just evaporated, and oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, so one of the things that we want to make sure is obviously that as other wallet vendors start supporting DigiAssets, that they don't do that. But also, if you were to take your, let's say you had a dozen assets in your DigiByte Android wallet, and you then go and wanted to restore that on Coinomi, and let's say that at the moment Coinomi doesn't specifically support DigiAssets, it could accidentally sweep those assets and effectively burn them when you go and make a transaction. So
theoretically, it would. It would all go to a change address, and bye-bye.
And it's gone. That's
one
bad,
transaction
obviously.
out of Coinomi. That's what would happen.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, like this is not going to happen because the wallets right now are not able to be directly restored between one and the other. Now, this is predominantly because we use the seed of DigiByte, whereas the relative industry standard is that you should use Bitcoin as your seed. Literally, the phrase Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, the phrase in the seed for these wallets is literally Bitcoin seed. And it seems every other major blockchain out there still uses Bitcoin seed. And, we obviously took the time to change ours to DigiByte seed, which surprisingly has actually caused us more of a headache than it's actually
Definitely a conversational headache.
Yeah. Well,
it's
that too. It's been a pain in the ass, but to be honest, it's now actually going to work in our favor because the DigiByte Android and DigiByte iOS apps will initially be the only ones that support that. And so when other wallets, say for example with Koinomi, or I've actually been in talks with a couple of other wallet vendors even just today, as they come on board and support DigiAssets, they will intentionally make that change to have the seed phrase of DigiByte. They will then make sure that they don't inadvertently sweep the wrong, or I suppose gather the wrong inputs for a transaction, accidentally burning your assets, because that's bad. No one wants their assets burnt. So they are basically going to become or come on board with our standard as they support DigiAssets.
We just came up with a very justifiable reason that the DigiByte standard is
It's
important.
different.
It's necessary.
Well, because yeah, exactly. If it wasn't, and if it was like, if you could just take your assets and restore them on another wallet, they would get spent. They would get burnt. And yeah.
But that can't happen right now, everyone. That's not going to happen.
So this is some of the stuff that we talk about on a pretty regular basis, and so this is one of the reasons that your DigiByte and your DigiAsset specifically will be safe, is because this is something that we've already gone through and we've already discussed, and we've already literally burnt a bunch of assets as well. But we obviously don't want that when it goes live. That's why there is no DigiAssets for Android, iOS right now.
Makes sense. Yeah.
It's close. This close.
So, yeah. Anyone else have any other questions that they want answered? I think so. We've talked about the UdoCrypt fork. One question I saw come up here recently that I think needs to be addressed is, sometimes it seems like every few months somebody will come up and be like, when are you going to burn DigiBytes? When are we going to destroy half the DigiBytes in circulation? And I realize now, I think I see where people get that idea. And I think we need to clarify it. Like, one, it's not technically possible because DigiByte is 100% circulated and decentralized. So we don't operate the DigiByte blockchain like certain exchanges do when they create their 100% centrally controlled coins, right? So for us to be able to do that, we would literally have to hack into everybody's wallet and either take half or 25%, and that's just not possible. Also, we can't arbitrarily change the total supply amount. That would cause a huge problem. In order to even think about doing that, we would actually have to do a very contentious, messy hard fork that would cause quite a few issues. And then also it would undermine faith in the rigidity. I do know for a fact some people have made investments in the DigiByte based on the fact of the supply chart, the supply curve, and that the fact there's only going to be 21 billion DigiBytes created. So, that's one of the reasons, like for instance, with Bitcoin, you're never going to see anybody arbitrarily change that 21 million limit. It would just fundamentally undermine the entire system, and it's just not possible. And then also, not to mention, the reason that DigiByte, started with 21 billion is that it was a 1 to 1,000 ratio with Bitcoin. And at the time, even though Bitcoin was only, at just, what was it, maybe $100, it was pretty low. We realized that even then, just to get one Bitcoin, you're looking at $100, $150. And it just, one of the confusing things that I've heard people talk about, it's like, oh, Bitcoin's at $7,000, $8,000. I don't have that much. And then you're like, no, you can actually buy a fractional part of a Bitcoin. And then the response is, well, that sucks. I want a whole one.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas with DigiByte, there's a lot more supply, right? So, we have enough where technically every single person on the planet could have at least one. In reality, that's probably never going to happen, but the same can't be said about that with Bitcoin. I mean, currently there's, 17 million Bitcoin in circulation. I mean, just in the state of Texas alone, there's 27 million people. And then out of that 17 million, about, 4 million are locked up and, lost and, aren't even part of the circulation. So that's why we chose, 21 billion.
Yeah, you saw what happened yesterday when the Bitcoins were dumped, 35 million affected the whole crypto market.
Right. Yeah. So, like I said, every DigiByte holder has either bought or mined them, myself included. Whereas a lot of these other projects, hold a massive amount in reserve, and that artificially inflates their market cap, but it's very short-sighted. It's very nearsighted. So this notion, people were saying this back in 2014. Oh, you need to burn half the DigiBytes, and DigiByte was worth, a fraction of what it is now at current levels. So it's a very short-sighted idea, and it doesn't take into context where things are going to be 5-10 years from now.
Yeah.
Theoretically, that condition where supply, demand exceeds supply, they want that now, and that's why the concept of burning comes to their mind. But that will not. It will. The state of things, state of affairs, will evolve to that inevitably.
Yeah.
Exceed supply.
Yeah. So that's an interesting question I've seen come up. Yeah. Any other questions? Or I feel like my brain's a little bit more turned on now than it was when I first joined. It was a little
Mine's slowly shutting down. It's 1:30 in the morning here.
And that's the amazing thing about the DigiByte community is here we are. One of us is in Europe. One of us is in, I don't even know what you call New Zealand. There's some words that come to mind that I've heard it referred to as. But
Aotearoa, God Zone.
Yeah, the other side of the world, and then the States. It's cool. That's the cool thing about the DigiByte community is it's worldwide, it's international, it's all over the place, and we have an awesome group of people. And I don't think that's appreciated enough. Just how many friendships have been formed. Even specifically with DigiByte, even going back to 2014, 2015. I know people that are now friends. That aren't necessarily active in DigiByte on a daily basis anymore. They were at one time. They also chose to sell too early, but that's their prerogative. But they they're good friends and they're connected. And so this technology is not only just bringing everybody together technologically, but at a human level. I think it's doing amazing things in the fact it's bringing like-minded individuals working towards a common vision and a shared goal.
Yes, true.
Pretty awesome.
Well said.
Yeah.
Oh, well, maybe we finish and wrap up on that lovely inspirational high note there. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Did any of you want to add anything else or?
Digi.
All right.
I just say get your core wallets updated, right? Everybody should be on 7.17.2. We're working hard to get everybody updated, and then stay tuned for some more streamlined releases for DigiAssets and in the DigiByte Go wallet. But yeah, thank you all for being here, and thank you guys. Thanks for all the hard work and dedication and commitment. It's awesome. It's been amazing, and 2019 is on track to be a great year. Even if we've been in a bear market the last 12 months, we've actually had more people come in, and we've got more done than we ever have over the last 5 years. So it's a great time.
I promise everyone I'll get a Twitter video when.
One good question. Somebody asked, how can people join the DigiByte awareness team? And by the way, happy 1 year anniversary. I hear the DigiByte awareness team is officially 1 year old today. So
yeah, we already started this AMA with the DigiByte.
Jared was sleeping at the
time. So, but again, Jared, I would like to say one more time, this all was never be possible without the core team of developers like you guys. It's really amazing what you have been what you have done in such a short time on development. I don't think there's any other project that has shown the same kind of development like DigiByte has shown. So really compliments.
We want to say thank you to all the other developers, and there's actually quite a few now. Some people still want to be anonymous, not publicly recognized, and I think that's amazing. And we've got a really awesome group of people. And it's fantastic. Like in our developer chat, for the most people aren't arguing with each other. Everybody's positive. Everybody's focused. Everybody's working on stuff, and it's a great group. We invite anybody that may be a developer that's listening to this today. and the question just popped up as a developer, where to start with experimenting with DigiAssets, go to the DigiByte core repo. And I just want to highlight this actually real quick. People don't realize, there's some metrics out there that go and look at the core GitHub and think, oh, well, these guys, they're making some updates here and there. And what we decided is if you go to DigiByte/DigiByte, there's one repository in there, and that's the core code, right? And that's the core protocol. That's the reference client. That's where it all began. And obviously we just got 7.17.2 out, but people need to also look and see all these other repositories that are actively being updated. I mean, here we go. There's been, 6 or 7 of them updated in the last 3 days, by 7+ people. So, we have all these other repositories for various and assorted things in the DigiByte ecosystem that have been updated in the last couple months. Like people don't see this. I mean, there's so much happening just outside the core library in an open source fashion. So if you want to learn more about DigiAssets, you need to come here to GitHub, DigiByte-core, and come in here. And I would recommend starting with the protocol specifications, which is where I was earlier, and just reading through it. That's the number one place to start when it comes to DigiByte core. And there's a guide that walks you through it, talks about it, does an example transaction. It talks about the scheme. So if you go to getting started here, talk about installing the SDK, how to do a sample transaction, some of the actual code. And then, if I come to like the API docs, it kind of gives an overall run of what you need to set up your own API. So we recommend everybody that's actually going to do this in a production fashion for a company, you need to be running your own stack, which we're actually looking at some things to make that easier. But yeah, I mean, go to DigiByte-core, DigiAssets protocol specifications, and just read around. I mean, it's give it a good 30, 40 minutes, and I think you'll have a pretty good overview of what's happening. And then we want to invite everybody to come join us. If you're a JavaScript person or a Java person, we have the Android SPV wallet. If you want to help us test, the development, we've got work for everybody. So, if you want to come help us, we openly invite you, and especially developers. So
pick a library.
The best way to start is maybe join Telegram. There are so many different groups. Also, when you want to join the awareness team, just start with Telegram and ask your questions. And
if you go to digibyte.io and go to the community, you can see links to the developer channel. If you need tech support, there's some very awesome community members that are always in there helping people with some basic questions. That's a great place to start. Telegram.
Folks love to, they want to be involved. So developers, industry developers, well aware from a GitHub perspective, just Git in general perspective, fork the repo, make some changes, pop a pull request, and talk to us in Telegram or wherever. And that's the nature of open source software development. Period.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that'll probably be the quickest place to get our attention, is to just pop a comment on the code itself or a pull request. And from my experience in the past, the people that have ended up being the best contributors literally don't make an introduction. They just come in, they start looking at the code, and then all of a sudden a pull request pops up and like, oh, hey, this is actually some really good stuff. Like, who is this person? So that's, and even just across the board in terms of like, getting on with any project. I mean, I think that's the best way to do it as a developer. It's just go get involved directly. And that's the beauty of open source, is any single person can come look at this and look at the code and get involved. So.
All right, community, I want to see one pull request, end of day.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us. I know it's been fun trying to get everybody all together here. I can see there's a lot of comments as well saying we should do this quarterly. This is kind of close to actually quarterly since the last time Jared and I did one. So
One other thing
Why
that
not?
people need to be aware of, if you want to actually try out Udo mining, you come on here to our DigiByte core, and we have the Udo miner. So if you went out and you've got an FPGA, we actually have the mining software on here by another amazing contributor to the DigiByte community, Mental Coax, who actually is the brains behind UdoCrypt. He was nice enough to help us out with some software. But you can actually, so if you're a mining pool operator or you're just a miner in general, we've actually had UdoCrypt activated on testnet for some time. So you can actually make sure you get your configuration working correctly by using this mining software. So just that's one other thing I don't think we mentioned, but and you can actually check it. So as you can see here, we have all the Udo blocks, on UdoCrypt. So, or on testnet. So that's just one other quick thing. But yeah, thank you all. You guys have been amazing. So
Have a good night, people.
Thank you.
I'll see you soon, Twitter.
Yeah, buddy.